A single pregnant mother found an old photo in her millionaire boss's office and discovered a shocking secret. He was the love of her youth who disappeared without explanation. Their lives changed forever in an unexpected way. A story that will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment where you are watching from. The air conditioning on the 40th floor buzzed incessantly, creating a mechanical symphony that Sarah Johnson had learned to ignore during the 8 months she had worked as a cleaner at Innovatech, one of the most promising tech companies in Silicon Valley. It was 3 in the afternoon on a Tuesday in February, and the sweltering heat of New York seemed to want to melt the asphalt below, even through the bulletproof glass that separated that corporate world from the reality of the streets. At 32, Sarah carried on her face the marks of someone who had lived more than she should for her age. Brown hair tied in a practical bun, almond-shaped eyes that alternated between maternal sweetness and a deep sadness she tried to hide, and a 6-month belly she disguised under the navy blue uniform of the cleaning company. Her calloused hands moved with precision as she organized the oak desk of the CEO, Michael Thompson. "Mom, are you done yet?" The sweet voice echoed from the reception area, where Lily, her 8-year-old daughter, was sitting on the beige leather sofa, doing her math homework. The girl had inherited her mother's eyes, but her hair was darker, almost black, and her delicate features reminded Sarah of someone she preferred not to remember. "Just 15 more minutes, sweetheart. Finish your homework and then we'll go home," Sarah replied, her voice carrying the fatigue of someone who had cleaned 12 floors that day. Michael's office was a sanctuary of sophistication, walls lined with fine wood, shelves filled with business and technology books, a telescope pointed out the panoramic window that offered a stunning view of the city. The aroma of cappuccino that always permeated the environment had become familiar to Sarah, just like her boss's distinctive cologne, a blend of sandalwood and bergamot that she had unconsciously memorized. As she wiped the desk, her elbow bumped into a carefully organized stack of documents, the papers scattered across the cold marble floor like leaves in the wind, and Sarah let out a sigh of frustration. "No, no, no," she murmured, kneeling awkwardly due to her pregnancy to pick up the documents. Contracts, financial reports, investment proposals, all confidential material she shouldn't even touch. That's when her fingers brushed against something different, a yellowed photograph, its edges slightly worn with time. Sarah picked it up delicately and felt her heart stop for a moment. In the image, a smiling young man with dark hair and bright eyes was sitting on a park bench she recognized instantly. Central Park. Sarah's hands began to tremble. That face, those eyes, that smile that had haunted her dreams for 14 years. It was Michael, but a younger, more innocent version, just as she remembered him when she was 18. "It can't be," she whispered, bringing the photo closer to her eyes, as if proximity could undo the reality before her. Her legs weakened, and she leaned against the desk. The room spun for a moment, and she had to take a deep breath to avoid fainting. The baby in her womb moved, as if sensing her emotional turmoil. Michael Thompson, the first love of her life, the father of Lily, the man who had disappeared from her life without a word of explanation, leaving her pregnant, alone, and with a shattered heart. Sarah remembered that day in the park perfectly. It was a Sunday in April 2010, and they had spent the entire afternoon talking about dreams and the future. Michael had just turned 19 and spoke enthusiastically about the business course he was taking at NYU. She, then 18, worked as a sales clerk in a clothing store in Central Park and dreamed of studying education. "One day I will have my own company," he had said, pointing to the corporate buildings in the distance. "And you will be the educational director of the best school in New York." They had asked a tourist to take that photo as a record of a moment that felt eternal. Sarah still kept an identical copy at home, hidden in a shoebox at the back of her closet, along with the only other memories of that relationship. "Why did you disappear, Michael?" she asked quietly to the photo, her tears misting the glass of the frame. "Why did you abandon me when I needed you the most?" The memory of that last phone call still hurt her. It was a Friday night, and she had called to tell him about the pregnancy, nervous but hopeful. The phone rang several times before going to voicemail. She tried again on Saturday, on Sunday, the following week. The number had been disconnected. When she went to his house in Upper East Side, the neighbors said the family had moved without leaving an address. "Mom, are you okay?" Lily's voice brought her back to the present. The girl had left her notebooks and approached, concern etched on her little face. Sarah quickly wiped her tears and tucked the photo among the documents. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I just knocked over some papers from Mr. Michael." "Mr. Thompson," Lily corrected. "The teacher said we have to call adults Mr. and Mrs. Mr. Thompson." If the girl only knew that the man who politely greeted them when they arrived at the office was, in fact, her biological father. Sarah finished organizing the documents with trembling hands, placing the photograph exactly where she had found it. Her heart was beating so fast that she was sure Sarah could hear him. When Michael returned from his meeting, he would sit in that same chair, look at that table, and have no idea that the woman who cleaned it was carrying his children, one he didn't know existed, and another growing in her womb, the result of a failed relationship with another man who had also abandoned her. Life had a cruel sense of humor, Sarah thought, as she gathered her cleaning supplies. For 14 years, she had imagined casual encounters with Michael at shopping malls, in parks, at parties with mutual friends. She had rehearsed speeches, prepared explanations, dreamed of impossible reconciliations, but never, in her wildest dreams, did she imagine she would reunite with him as his employee, cleaning his desk, while he had become exactly the successful businessman he had promised to be that distant afternoon in Central Park. "Come on, Lily, it's time to go home," Sarah said, her voice firmer than she felt inside. As they walked toward the elevator, Sarah couldn't help but glance over her shoulder at Michael's office. The photo was there, innocent yet revealing, holding secrets that could change their lives forever. The elevator descended slowly through the 40 floors, and with each stop, Sarah felt she was moving away not only from the office, but from a decision she knew she would have to make, to tell or not to tell the truth to the man who had been her first love and who now, unknowingly, was her boss. The following days turned into silent torture for Sarah. Each morning, as she entered the mirrored building of Silicon Valley with Lily by her side, she felt her stomach churn with nerves. The uniformed doorman, always friendly, greeted the girl with a warm smile, while Sarah signed the visitor log with hands that insisted on trembling. "Good morning, Miss Johnson. How is the little princess today?" asked James, the doorman who had worked there for 15 years and knew the life stories of half the building's employees. "Well, Mr. James, Lily is excited for the July vacation," Sarah replied, trying to keep her voice steady while watching the elevators, praying that Michael wouldn't appear at that moment. The cleaning routine had become an exercise in involuntary espionage. Sarah knew Michael's schedule by heart. He always arrived at 8:30, left for meetings between 10 and noon, had lunch at the Japanese restaurant on the 3rd floor at 12:45, and usually stayed until 7. In the evening, she had adjusted her hours to clean his office when he wasn't present, but even so, casual encounters were inevitable. On Thursday of the second week, Sarah was organizing the meeting room when she heard the familiar voice echoing down the hallway. Michael was animatedly discussing a potential partnership with Robert Carter, the CFO, about expanding into the American market. International expansion is crucial, Robert. We can't limit ourselves to the US if we want to compete with the big players, Michael said, his voice carrying the same passion Sarah remembered from when he spoke about his dreams in the park. She hid behind the partition wall, clutching the cleaning cloth against her chest as if it were a shield. Through the glass of the meeting room, she could watch him without being seen. Michael, at 33, was a more mature and sophisticated version of the young man she had loved. His hair was still dark, but now cut in a sharp executive style. He had gained some muscle, likely from working out and living a more disciplined life. He wore a charcoal grey suit that must have cost more than Sarah earned in 3 months. But it was his eyes that remained the same. Those expressive brown eyes that could alternate between tenderness and determination, and had been her downfall at 18. "And how is the new assistant? How is she adapting?" Robert asked. "Emily is exceptional. MBA from Harvard, international experience, speaks 4 languages. Exactly what we needed to take this next step," Michael replied, and Sarah felt a pang of something she couldn't identify as jealousy or mere curiosity. Emily Carter had joined the company 3 weeks ago, brought directly from a German multinational. Tall, blonde, with clothes that screamed European sophistication and a demeanor that made it clear she was used to being the smartest woman in the room. Sarah had observed her during the morning cleanings, how she organized Michael's schedule with military precision, how she spoke on the phone in fluent English, how her gaze lingered a little longer than professional when she looked at her boss. "Is she single?" Robert's question came with that casual male tone that fooled no one. Michael laughed. "Robert, you've been married for 20 years. It's not for me, it's for you. It's about time you found someone, Michael. At 33, successful, handsome. What are you waiting for?" Sarah held her breath, waiting for the answer. Michael paused for a long time. "You know, Robert, sometimes I think I left something important behind. Someone important, and it keeps me from moving on completely." Sarah's heart raced. Could it be that he still thought of her after all these years? Or was it just the romanticism of an abandoned woman trying to find signs where none existed? "But that was a long time ago, wasn't it?" Robert insisted. "You once told me about a girlfriend from your youth who vanished from your life." "No, Robert, I vanished from her life." Michael's voice dropped, laden with a sadness that Sarah recognized well. "And sometimes I wonder if she had the baby." Sarah dropped the cleaning cloth to the floor. The noise echoed through the empty room, and she quickly bent down to pick it up, her heart pounding so hard she felt as if the sound of ringing in her ears. Baby. He knew. He knew about the pregnancy and had disappeared anyway. "Baby!" Roberto's voice rose a few octaves. "You never told me this." "It was complicated, Roberto. My father found out about the relationship and sent me to the United States the same week. He said that if I stayed he would disown me. I was young, financially dependent on him, and she came from a different social class. My father made it clear that it was a slip-up I had to forget." Sarah felt a mix of anger and compassion. Anger that he chose family money over her and the baby. Compassion because she now understood that perhaps he had also been a victim of circumstances. "And when did you come back from the United States?" 2 years later. I searched for her for months. I went to the house where she lived, but the neighbors said the family had moved. I tried to find mutual friends, but our social circles were very different. It was as if she had simply disappeared. Disappeared. Sarah bitterly remembered how she had moved with her mother to a small apartment in East Harlem shortly after Lily was born. They didn't have the money to keep the rent on the house in Central Park, and she needed a job that would accept a single mother with a baby. For 2 years, she had worked in a textile factory in the Bronx, 12-hour shifts, leaving Lily with an elderly neighbor who took care of several children for a few bucks. "Michael, that was over 10 years ago. You have to move on," Roberto said. "And look, between us, Emily is clearly interested. I saw how she looks at you. Emily is an exceptional professional, Roberto. I'm not going to mix work with personal life." But Sarah had noticed too, the way Emily found excuses to enter Michael's office, how she offered to stay late when he did, how her fingers lingered on his when she handed him documents, and more importantly, she had noticed how Michael didn't completely discourage her. The sound of footsteps approaching made Sarah panic. She quickly left the meeting room and pretended to be cleaning the water cooler in the hallway when Michael and Roberto passed by her. "Good afternoon, Sarah," Michael said, stopping beside her. "How are you feeling? Is the pregnancy going smoothly?" It was the first time he addressed her directly beyond the formal greetings of good morning and good afternoon. Sarah felt her face heat up. "Yes, Mr. Thompson, thank you for asking." He looked at her for a moment longer than usual, and Sarah had the impression that there was something familiar in his eyes, as if some distant memory was trying to emerge. "Is your daughter at reception?" "Yes, she is, doing her homework. She's a very polite girl, always greets everyone, always quiet. You raised her very well." "If you only knew that I helped raise her," Sarah thought. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson." As they walked away, Sarah leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. The conversation she had overheard changed everything. Michael hadn't abandoned her out of cowardice or lack of love. He had been forced by his family and had then searched for her. That didn't erase the 14 years of struggling alone, the sleepless nights with baby Lily, the humiliation of raising a child without a father, the poverty, the judgments. But it explained a lot. When her shift ended, Sarah passed by the reception where Lily was putting her notebooks in her faded pink backpack. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Why do you always look sad when Mr. Thompson talks to us?" Sarah stopped in the middle of reaching for her bag. "I'm not sad, Issa." "You are. You have that face you make when you watch a romantic movie on TV and the girl doesn't end up with the guy." Out of the mouths of children, Sarah thought. Lily had inherited not only her mother's eyes, but also her keen intuition. "It's just that sometimes Mommy thinks about things from the past." "Sad things?" "Complicated things." Lily held her mother's hand as they walked toward the elevator. "You know what the teacher said, that complicated things sometimes become simpler when we talk about them." Sarah squeezed her daughter's small hand. If it were that simple, she thought, as the elevator doors closed, taking them away from the secrets that loomed on the 40th floor like ghosts of the past that refused to be buried. March arrived with the intense rains typical of autumn in New York. In the early hours of a Tuesday, Sarah was awakened by Lily's cries of pain. The girl was pale, sweating, with her hand pressed against the right side of her abdomen. "Mom, it hurts a lot," Lily cried, curled up in the bed she shared with Sarah in their small 2-room apartment in East Harlem. The rent fit within their tight budget, but the neighborhood was almost 2 hours away from work, forcing Sarah to wake up at 5 in the morning every day. Sarah didn't hesitate. She put on the first clothes she found, grabbed her Medicaid card, and called a taxi, a luxury she couldn't afford, but the situation demanded it. During the ride to the municipal hospital, Lily whimpered softly in her mother's lap, who whispered words of comfort while mentally calculating how many extra hours of work it would take to pay for that fare. "Everything will be okay, sweetheart. Mommy is here," Sarah repeated, kissing her daughter's feverish forehead. In the emergency room, after 3 hours of waiting in uncomfortable plastic chairs, the diagnosis came as a shock. Acute appendicitis. Immediate surgery. "Mrs. Johnson, the situation is urgent. We need to operate now," explained Dr. Smith, a young resident who appeared to be the same age Michael was when they met. "It's a simple procedure, but it can't wait." Sarah signed the papers with trembling hands. The baby. In her womb, already almost 7 months along, Lily seemed restless with all the stress. She called the cleaning company to inform them that she couldn't work that day or in the coming days, knowing that this meant a deduction from her paycheck. "Mom, am I going to die?" Lily asked on the stretcher just before entering the operating room. "Of course not, Princess. It's just a minor surgery. When you wake up, the pain will be gone, and we'll eat lots of ice cream." Sarah forced a smile, hiding her own fear. While waiting outside the operating room, Sarah sat in the cold hospital corridor and finally allowed the tears to fall. She had no health insurance, no family in New York to help, and now she would have to miss work just when she needed the money the most. The pregnancy was already weighing on her back and legs, and carrying Lily during the early morning rush had left a throbbing pain in her lower back. It was 4 hours of surgery. When the doctor finally appeared, Sarah jumped from the chair where she had uncomfortably dozed off. "Everything went well, Mrs. Johnson. Your daughter is in recovery. It was a more complicated case than we expected. The appendix had ruptured, but we managed to clean everything out. She will need to stay hospitalized for at least 5 days. 5 days, Sarah quickly calculated. 5 days without working, plus the costs of medications that Medicaid wouldn't cover, plus the round-trip fare to the hospital. It would be impossible to pay next month's rent. On Thursday, while Lily slept sedated, Sarah was sitting by the bed when she heard familiar footsteps in the hallway. Her heart raced when she saw Michael appear at the door of the room, looking sharp even in casual clothes. A white linen shirt and dark jeans that probably cost more than she earned in a month. "Mr. Thompson?" Sarah quickly stood up, smoothing the simple dress she had worn for the 3rd consecutive day. "What are you doing here?" Michael entered the room carrying a bouquet of colorful flowers and a paper bag with some gifts. "I heard from the cleaning staff that your daughter was hospitalized. I came to see how she's doing." Sarah was speechless. It was inconceivable that her boss, her ex-boyfriend who didn't recognize her, had come here. She's fine. It was appendicitis, but the surgery went well," Sarah stammered. Michael placed the flowers on the bedside table and looked at Lily sleeping. Something in his expression changed, as if a distant memory was trying to form. "She has your eyes," he said softly. Sarah felt her blood run cold. "Excuse me?" "Her eyes. They're just like yours." Michael turned to Sarah, studying her face with an intensity that made her nervous. "Actually, since you started working at the company, I've had the feeling that I've seen you somewhere before. Your face seems familiar." This was the moment. Sarah could feel the truth on the tip of her tongue, wanting to come out, but looking at Lily defenseless, in the hospital bed, at Michael in his expensive clothes, at the social chasm opening between them, she lost her courage. "It must be an impression, Mr. Thompson. New York is big, but sometimes we think we know everyone," she said, forcing a smile. Michael nodded, but his eyes continued to study her face. "Sarah is a beautiful name. I've always liked that name." The name slipped from his mouth with a familiarity that made Sarah's heart skip a beat. There was something there, a memory wanting to emerge. "Thank you for the flowers, and for the gifts. You didn't have to go through the trouble." "Of course I did." Michael sat in the chair next to the bed, and Sarah noticed how he watched Lily sleeping with a tenderness that went beyond professional courtesy. "How old is she?" 8. She had her birthday in December. Michael did a quick mental calculation, and Sarah saw something change in his expression. December 2014, 9 months after April 2014 when they had met. But he was born in May 1990, so... And her father? The question came out naturally, but Sarah noticed a tension in her voice. He's not present. Sarah chose her words carefully. He never was. A heavy silence hung over the room, broken only by the constant beeping of the medical monitors. Michael looked at Lily with an expression that Sarah couldn't decipher. You know, Sarah, a few years ago I dated a girl named Mari. She also had eyes like yours, and her hair... He extended his hand as if to touch Sarah's brown strands, but held back at the last moment. It was exactly your color. Sarah felt the world spin. Mari, that was what he affectionately called her. Was he starting to remember? What happened to her? Sarah asked, her voice coming out rougher than she intended. Michael sighed deeply. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I was young, pressured by my family, and I abandoned her when she needed me the most. I found out years later that she was pregnant when I disappeared. The confession fell like a bomb in the silent room. Sarah felt tears burning her eyes, but she managed to hold them back. And you never looked for her afterward? I did. For 2 years I searched New York, but she had completely vanished. Sometimes I wonder, what would my child be like today? Would it be a boy or a girl? Would they be as smart as their mother? Would they have her eyes? Michael looked again at Lily, and this time Sarah was sure he was starting to connect the dots. The girl's age, the physical resemblance, the familiarity of Sarah's face. Mr. Thompson, Sarah began, her voice trembling, there's something I need to... At that moment, Lily stirred in the bed and slowly opened her eyes. When she saw Michael sitting beside her, she smiled faintly. Hi, Mr. Thompson. Did you come to visit me? I did, Princess. How are you feeling? Better. Mum said that when I get out of here, let's eat a lot of ice cream. Michael smiled. And we really will. What flavor do you like the most? Chocolate with strawberry. My mum says it's a weird combination, but I think it's delicious. Michael laughed, a genuine sound that filled the room with an unexpected lightness. You know what? I also love chocolate with strawberry. Your mom is right. It's a strange combination, but delicious. Sarah observed the interaction between father and daughter, even if only she knew it, and felt her heart break and mend at the same time. The way Michael spoke to Lily, the natural kindness, the patience, it was how she had imagined it would be all those years. Mr. Thompson, Lily said, do you know my dad? The innocent question fell like a bolt from the blue in the room. Michael looked at Sarah, then at Lily, and a look of shock slowly spread across his face. How is your dad, Lily? I don't know him. Mommy says he went on a trip when I was a baby and couldn't come back. But she has a picture of him saved. He's handsome, has dark hair and kind eyes. Mummy says I got my nose shape from him. Michael unconsciously touched his own nose, and Sarah saw the exact moment the realization hit him. His eyes widened, and he turned to her with a look of total disbelief. Sarah Johnson, he whispered, and this time there was no doubt in his voice. Little Sarah. The affectionate nickname that only he used broke down the last barriers. Sarah nodded slowly, tears finally falling. Hi, Michael. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael stood up from the chair as if he had been electrocuted, his hands visibly trembling as he processed the revelation that had hit him like an emotional tsunami. Sarah. Little Sarah. His voice came out as a hoarse whisper, laden with 14 years of regret and guilt. It's you. It really is you. Lily looked confused from one adult to the other, feeling the electric tension that filled the hospital room. Mummy, Why are you guys crying?" Sarah quickly wiped her tears and moved closer to her daughter's bed. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Sometimes adults get emotional when they reunite with important people from the past." Michael couldn't stop looking at Lily. Now that he knew the truth, the similarities were striking. The shape of her nose, identical to his, the curve of her eyebrows, the way she tilted her head when she was curious, a gesture he had inherited from his own mother. "She is," he swallowed hard, "she is my daughter." It wasn't a question. It was a statement filled with a mix of joy, shock, and a deep pain from the discovery of lost time. Sarah nodded, unable to speak. Lily, sensing that something important was happening, sat up in bed, despite the pain in her abdomen. "Mommy!" The girl's voice came out small and scared. Michael approached the bed, cautious movements as if he were approaching an injured animal. "Lily, do you know that your mum knew me a long time ago?" The girl shook her head. We dated when we were younger, before you were born." Lily's eyes widened. At 8 years old, she was smart enough to start connecting the dots. "So you are my dad?" The innocent question hit Michael like a punch in the stomach. He looked at Sarah, silently asking for permission to confirm what the girl had already deduced. Sarah took a deep breath. "Yes, Lily, Michael is your dad." The room fell silent for long moments. Lily was processing the information with the seriousness of a child who always knew this conversation would happen one day. Michael was clearly in shock, alternating his gaze between Sarah and the daughter he had just discovered. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Lily asked, her voice carrying more curiosity than hurt. Michael sat on the edge of the bed, his voice choked. "Because I made a terrible mistake, Princess. When your mom was pregnant with you, I had to travel and lost contact with her. I spent all these years looking for both of you." It was a simplified version of the truth, suitable for an 8-year-old. Sarah watched as Michael instinctively adapted the explanation to avoid hurting Lily, and it reminded her why she had fallen in love with him at 18. "And now that you've found us, will you stay?" Lily's question was laden with a vulnerability that broke both adults' hearts. Michael looked at Sarah, his eyes pleading for a second chance he knew he didn't deserve. "If your mom allows it, I would really like to be part of your life, Lily, to try to make up for all the time we've lost." Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions: anger for the years of struggle alone, relief that Lily finally had a present father, fear that Michael might disappear again, and deep down, a spark of the love she had tried to bury all these years. "Michael," Sarah began, her voice careful, "I need you to understand. It wasn't easy raising Lily alone. There were nights when I didn't know how I would pay the rent, how I would buy medicine when she got sick. She asked me thousands of times about her dad, and I always had to make up excuses to protect her feelings." Michael lowered his head, guilt visibly weighing on his shoulders. "I know that nothing I say will erase these 14 years, Sarah, but I need you to know I didn't choose to abandon you. My father found out about our relationship and gave me an ultimatum. Either I broke up with you and went to study in the United States, or he would disown me, and you would suffer the social consequences of dating someone from the Thompson family." Sarah frowned. "What consequences?" "My father. He wasn't a good man, Sarah. He had dangerous connections, political influence. He threatened to destroy your life and that of... Your family said I would disappear from your life. They said they would make it impossible for you to live in peace in New York." The revelation hit Sarah like a bucket of cold water. All these years, she had imagined that Michael had abandoned her out of cowardice or shame for his humble beginnings. She had never considered that he might have been blackmailed. "I was young, Sarah, financially dependent on him, terrified of the threats. I thought I was protecting you by disappearing. It was the worst decision of my life." Lily, who had been listening intently, reached out her small hand and touched Michael's arm. "Were you scared?" Michael smiled sadly at his daughter. "Very scared, Princess. Scared that they would hurt your mother, scared of my father, scared of not being man enough to protect you both. But now I'm an adult. I have my own company, and I'm not afraid of anything or anyone anymore." "And your father?" Sarah asked. "He died 5 years ago. Heart attack. In fact, it was after his funeral that I intensified my search for you. Until then, I was still afraid he would carry out his threats." Sarah absorbed the information in silence. Part of her wanted to stay angry, to keep blaming Michael for all the years of struggle. But looking at him there, vulnerable and clearly devastated by the discovery of the daughter he had never known, she felt the anger begin to dissolve. "Mom," Lily said, "you always told me that everyone deserves a second chance." Her daughter's innocent wisdom echoed in the room like a bell. Sarah looked at Michael, seeing in the 33-year-old man traces of the 19-year-old boy she had loved. But she also saw the differences: maturity, determination, the genuine pain of a father who had lost the first 8 years of his daughter's life. "I need time, Michael," Sarah finally said. It's a lot. Lily just came out of surgery. I'm almost 7 months pregnant from another relationship. Our situation is complicated." "Complicated how?" Michael asked, noticing for the first time Sarah's prominent belly. Sarah sighed. "The baby's father also abandoned me when he found out about the pregnancy. Apparently I have a special talent for choosing men who disappear." The implication hit Michael hard. "Sarah, I'm not going to disappear again. Never again." "That's what he said too," Sarah murmured. Michael stepped closer, his voice firm and determined. "Look into my eyes, Sarah. I'm not that 19-year-old boy haunted by my father anymore. I own my own life. I have resources. I have stability. And more importantly, now I know I have a daughter who needs me and a woman who I could never forget." The last words made Sarah's heart race. "Michael, let me help with the hospital costs, Sarah. Let me start taking responsibility as a father, not out of obligation, but because I want to, because you both deserve all the care I can offer." Lily looked from her mother to her newly discovered father. "Can I call you Dad?" Michael felt his eyes fill with tears. "Only if you want to, Princess. I don't want to pressure you." "I've always wanted to have a dad," Lily said simply. "And you seem nice. You brought me flowers when I was sick." Michael laughed through his tears, reaching out to gently touch his daughter's face. "And I will bring flowers every time you need them, Princess. Forever." Sarah watched the interaction between father and daughter and felt something break and rebuild inside her at the same time. The fear was still there, but for the first time in years, there was also hope. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe they could somehow build a family from the broken pieces of their pasts. "All right," Sarah finally said. "Let's try. Slowly, calmly, but let's try." The smile that spread across Michael's face lit up the entire room, and for the first time, since she had found that yellowed photo in his office, Sarah allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, fairy tales were possible in real life. The 5 days of Lily's hospitalization turned into a period of delicate discoveries and moments that oscillated between tenderness and tension. Michael had insisted on fully covering the medical costs, as well as enrolling Sarah and Lily in a private health plan, a gesture that, while generous, made Sarah uncomfortable due to the sudden financial dependence. "Michael, I can't accept this," Sarah protested on Friday morning, holding the health plan card he had brought. They were in the hospital corridor, away from Lily's curious ears. "We are not your financial responsibility." Michael ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Sarah remembered well from when he got frustrated. Sarah, you are exactly my responsibility. Lily is my daughter. 8 years late, but still my daughter. And what about me? I'm not your responsibility, Michael. I'm a grown woman pregnant by another man, and I can take care of myself. The mention of her pregnancy always created an awkward silence between them. Michael was still processing the fact that Sarah had been involved with another man, had been abandoned again, and was now carrying a child that wasn't his. You shouldn't be working as a cleaner, Sarah. You were brilliant in literature. You wanted to be a teacher. Life happened, Michael, Sarah interrupted, her voice carrying years of exhaustion. When Lily was born, I needed to work immediately. I didn't have time or money to finish my studies. Cleaning was what was available, and I would do anything for my children. Michael felt the weight of guilt again. If he had been present, Sarah would never have needed to abandon her dreams. Let me help you go back to school. I can pay for college, take care of Lily while you— Stop! Sarah raised her hand. You can't just show up after 14. Michael sighed. You can't fix everything with money, Sarah. It doesn't work that way. They were interrupted by a nurse who approached with a professional smile. Excuse me, are you the parents of Lily? The doctor would like to speak with you. The words, the parents of Lily, echoed strangely in both their ears. It was the first time someone publicly identified them as a couple, as the parents of a child together. In the office, Dr. Smith explained that Lily was recovering exceptionally well and could be discharged on Monday, but she would need complete rest for 2 weeks. This means she won't be able to go to school or accompany her mother to work, the doctor explained. Someone will need to stay with her full time. Sarah felt her stomach drop. 2 weeks without working meant 2 weeks without pay, just when the costs for medication and post-surgery care would pile up. I can stay with her, Michael said immediately. Michael, you have a company to run. I can work from home. In fact, I have a house in the suburbs with an office, a guest room, and a garden where she can soak up some sun without physical exertion. No, Sarah was categorical. She hardly knows you. I won't leave her with a stranger, biological father or not. The word stranger hit Michael like a slap. Technically, Sarah was right, but it hurt to hear that from the mother of his daughter. Then why don't you both come stay at my house? Michael proposed. There's enough space. Lily will have all the comfort she needs to recover, and you can take care of her without worrying about work or money. Sarah looked at him as if he had suggested madness. Michael, I can't live in your house. I'm pregnant with another man's child. We barely reconnected. It would be practical, Michael insisted. There are separate rooms. You would have total privacy, and it would be an opportunity for me to get to know my daughter properly. The doctor, who had been following the discussion with growing interest, diplomatically intervened. May I suggest you discuss this at home and decide? The important thing is that the child has a calm environment to recover. That afternoon, while Lily slept under the effects of painkillers, Michael and Sarah walked through the hospital's internal garden. The March sun filtered through the trees, creating dancing shadows on the stone path. Sarah, I know I'm asking a lot, Michael began, stopping near a wrought-iron bench, but think of Lily. She deserves to have every possible condition to recover well. Don't do this, Michael. Don't use our daughter to emotionally blackmail me. It's not blackmail. It's logic. You live in a tiny apartment in the suburbs. You need to work to pay the bills, and Lily will need constant care. In my house, she would have her own suite, a garden, a pool for physical therapy when the doctor allows. Sarah sat on the bench, the weight of her pregnancy and emotional exhaustion making it hard to stand for long. And then, when she recovers, what happens? We go back to our simple lives while you continue being the successful CEO? Michael sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. It doesn't have to be that way. I want to be part of your lives, Sarah, not just for the next 15 days, but forever. Michael, Sarah sighed deeply, you don't understand. I'm not the 18-year-old girl you once knew. I've been through things you can't imagine. I've been humiliated, judged, rejected. I've learned not to trust promises, especially from men. Michael felt a pang in his chest. Did the father of the baby also make promises? Sarah laughed bitterly. Rodrigo promised he was ready to start a family, that he didn't mind I already had a daughter, that he loved me just as I was. Those promises lasted 3 months until he discovered he wasn't ready to be a stepfather and that a baby would interfere with his career plans. I'm not Rodrigo, Sarah. No, you are Michael, the first man who taught me that people who say they love you can just disappear without explanation. The accusation hit Michael hard. He knew he deserved to hear that, and probably worse for the rest of his life. You're right, he said calmly. I don't have the right to ask for your trust, not after what I did, but I'm asking for a chance to prove I've changed, that I'm worthy of being Lily's father and maybe, one day, having you back in my life. Sarah looked at him in surprise. Michael, I'm pregnant with another man. In 2 months I will have a baby that isn't yours. How can you want this? Michael turned completely to her, his eyes intense and determined. Because I could never forget you, Sarah. In 14 years, no woman has been able to fill the space you left in my heart. And if this baby is important to you, he will be important to me too. Sarah felt tears burning in her eyes. Michael's words echoed exactly what she had dreamed of hearing during all those lonely years. But reality was more complicated than dreams. I need to think, she finally said. How much time do you need? Until Monday. When Lily is discharged, I will give you an answer. Michael nodded, respecting the boundary she had set. They walked back to Lily's room in silence, each lost in their own thoughts and fears. In the room, they found Lily awake, playing with a tablet that Michael had brought the day before. When she saw them enter, she smiled brightly. Dad, she said, testing the new word on her tongue, can you teach me to play? That game from your company, the city-building one? Dad. The word hit Michael like a bolt of pure happiness. Of course, Princess. I can teach you any game you want. Sarah watched the interaction between the two and felt her heart tighten. Lily deserved to have a present father, a father who loved and cared for her. Marina looked around the small apartment that had been her refuge for the past few years. The peeling walls, the simple furniture, the persistent smell of dampness that she could never completely eliminate. She picked up the shoebox where she kept memories of Michael and took out the yellowed photo taken on that distant Sunday at Central Park. 2 young lovers smiling, with their whole future ahead of them. Maybe it wasn't too late to reclaim at least a part of that lost dream. Monday arrived shrouded in the typical fog of chilly autumn days in New York. Marina was at the hospital reception at 8 in the morning, a small suitcase with her and Izzy's clothes beside her, when Michael appeared punctually with a bouquet of white daisies, Marina's favorite flowers, a detail he had remembered after 14 years. I've decided to accept your proposal, Marina said straightforwardly, even before he could ask, but with conditions. Michael nodded, clearly relieved. All the conditions you want. First, this is temporary, just until Izzy fully recovers. Second, we sleep in separate rooms with no romantic expectations. Third, you won't make decisions about Izzy without consulting me first. And fourth, she hesitated. If at any moment I feel this isn't working, we leave. No discussion. I agree to everything, Michael said immediately. And Marina, thank you for giving me this chance. Michael's house in Upper West Side was exactly what Marina had imagined it. Would be modern, spacious, and immaculate. 3 suites, an office, a gourmet kitchen, a living room with double-height ceilings, and a backyard garden with a pool. It was the kind of house that appeared in decor magazines, and Marina felt completely out of place, walking around with her simple suitcase and thrift store clothes. "This will be your suite," Michael said, opening the door to a spacious room with an ensuite bathroom and a balcony overlooking the garden. "And this," he opened the door next to it, "is for Izzy." Izzy, still pale but excited about the newness, ran to explore the room Michael had prepared for her. There was a princess bed with a pink canopy, shelves filled with age-appropriate books, educational toys, and even a video game console. "Michael, this is too much," Marina protested. "Did you buy all this in 2 days?" "I wanted her to feel at home," Michael replied, watching Izzy discover every detail of the room with enthusiasm. "And before you complain about the expenses, I didn't buy anything. I had my decorator bring everything on loan from a store. When you guys leave, they take everything back." It was a kind lie, and they both knew it, but Marina chose not to argue. Izzy was radiant, and that was what mattered. The first days were a delicate dance of trial and error. Michael cancelled all in-person meetings and worked from home, splitting his time between work calls and moments with Izzy. Marina, initially tense and hyper-vigilant, gradually began to relax as she saw how Michael interacted naturally with her daughter. "Dad, can you help me with my math homework?" Izzy asked on Wednesday, still in her pajamas on the living room sofa, where she had set up a makeshift office with her notebooks. Marina, who was in the kitchen preparing juice, paused to observe the scene. Michael, dressed in a dress shirt and tailored pants because of a video conference he had just finished, sat on the floor next to his daughter and began patiently explaining division problems. "Let's imagine you have 24 cupcakes and want to divide them equally among 6 friends at the birthday party," Michael said, drawing small circles on the paper. "How many cupcakes does each friend get?" "4, Izzy replied, proud of arriving at the answer. "Perfect, you're very smart, sweetheart." Marina felt a wave of emotion watching that domestic scene. Michael had naturally taken on the role of dad, without drama or pretense. He genuinely seemed to enjoy every moment with Izzy. "Can I ask a question?" Izzy said, putting away her colored pencils. "Of course. Why don't you and Mom live together? If you liked each other when you were young—" Michael looked in Marina's direction, who pretended to be busy with the juice but was clearly paying attention to the conversation. "It's complicated, Izzy. Sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt the people they love, and then it becomes hard to fix everything. But do you still like Mom?" Marina held her breath, waiting for the answer. Michael was honest. "I never stopped liking your mom, sweetheart. But she needs to decide if she can forgive me for the mistakes I made." Izzy nodded with the seriousness of a child who understood more about adult feelings than she should. "She will forgive. Mom always says that holding on to anger just hurts us." That afternoon, while Izzy napped, Michael found Marina on the balcony of her room, watching the street activity through the wrought-iron bars. "Can I sit?" he asked, pointing to the wicker chair next to hers. Marina nodded. They sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the sounds of the city. Cars, distant honks, the barking of a dog in the neighbor's yard. "How did you manage all this, Michael?" Marina asked, gesturing toward the house. "The company, the financial stability. You really achieved all your youth dreams." Michael laughed without humor. "I achieved my professional dreams, Marina. But the personal ones, those I destroyed when I left you. Tell me how your life was after you returned from the United States." Michael leaned back in the chair, his eyes lost in memories. "When I came back in 2012, I spent 2 years looking for you. As I went crazy, I even hired a private investigator. When I couldn't find you, I dove into work as a way to escape. I started the company in 2015, and it grew rapidly because I worked 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And women? Relationships? Michael hesitated. A few casual relationships, nothing serious. I had a fiancée in 2018, Jessica, the daughter of an important client. The engagement lasted 8 months. What happened? I couldn't truly love her. The night before the wedding, she confronted me, saying I was still in love with someone else. She was right. We cancelled everything. Sarah absorbed the information in silence. You lost a lot because of me. No, Sarah. I lost a lot because of my own choices, for being cowardly at 19, for choosing family money over fighting for you. The baby in her womb moved, as if reacting to the emotional tension of the conversation. Sarah placed her hand on her belly, a gesture that Michael noticed. How are you feeling about the pregnancy? Physically fine, emotionally... Sarah sighed. It's hard being pregnant by a man who abandoned me, living in the house of another man who left me. It's not exactly the situation I imagined for my second pregnancy. Michael felt guilt stab him. Sarah, do you want to talk about Rodrigo? About what happened? Sarah looked at him, weighing whether she really wanted to open that wound. Rodrigo was a supervisor at the cleaning company where I worked. 3 years younger than me, a dreamer, full of plans. He said he didn't mind that I had a daughter, that he wanted to start a family with me. And what changed? Reality, when I told him about the pregnancy, he started calculating costs. Diapers, crib, health insurance, private school. He said he wasn't ready to support 2 women and 2 children. Those were his words. A week later, he requested a transfer to the San Francisco branch and disappeared from our lives. Michael clenched his fists. He doesn't help financially. He completely vanished, even changed his phone number. Sarah, I want you to register my name as the father on the baby's birth certificate. Sarah turned to him, surprised. Michael, this baby isn't your biological child. It doesn't matter. If this baby is important to you, it will be important to me. I want him to have my last name, have all legal rights, be officially my son, just like Lily should have been from the start. The tears Sarah had been holding back for days finally began to fall. Why are you doing this, Michael? Why are you being so perfect? It scares me. Michael stood up and knelt beside Sarah's chair, gently taking her hands. Because I love you, Sarah. I never stopped loving you. And because I want to make up for every tear you've shed, every night you've spent awake worrying alone, every moment you felt abandoned. I can't change the past, but I can make sure you never feel alone again. Sarah looked into Michael's eyes and saw the sincerity that had made her fall in love 14 years earlier. But she also saw the maturity of a man who had learned from his mistakes. I'm still scared, Michael, she whispered. I know, and that's understandable. But I will be here, proving every day that you can trust me until you believe it. At that moment, Lily appeared on the balcony, still with messy hair from her nappur. Can I watch cartoons with you guys? Michael and Sarah quickly separated, discreetly wiping their tears. Of course, sweetheart, Michael said. What cartoon do you want to watch? The one about the family that always stays together, even when everything goes wrong, Lily replied, squeezing between them on the armchair. Sarah and Michael exchanged a glance over their daughter's head. Perhaps Lily was giving a not-so-subtle hint about what she really wanted, a family that stayed together even when everything went wrong, and maybe, just maybe, they were ready to try again. The domestic routine that had settled in, the Upper West Side home, was abruptly disturbed on Thursday morning when the doorbell rang at 8 o'clock. Michael was preparing breakfast, a surprising discovery for Sarah, who didn't expect a CEO to know how to make scrambled eggs, while Lily played with puzzles in the living room. I'll get it, Michael said, drying his hands on the apron that Sarah had insisted he wear to avoid staining his dress shirt. Sarah continued cutting fruit for Lily, but stopped when she heard a female voice on the intercom, speaking in English with an accent that was definitely not American. "Michael, it's me, Emily. I need to talk to you. It's urgent." Sarah felt her stomach drop. Emily Carter, the perfect executive assistant who had noticed the lingering looks she directed at her boss. "Emily, it's 8 in the morning. What's going on?" Michael replied, visibly uncomfortable. "Please, Michael, 5 minutes." Michael looked at Sarah, who pretended to be focused on the fruit, but her whole body had tensed. "Let her up," Sarah said without looking at him. "If it's urgent." A few minutes later, Emily appeared at the living room door wearing a pristine beige suit, her blonde hair styled in a sophisticated bun, and an expression that alternated between professional concern and something Sarah immediately identified as female territoriality. "Michael, Emily stopped mid-sentence when she saw the domestic scene. A child playing on the floor, a clearly pregnant woman organizing breakfast, Michael wearing a home apron. "Sorry, I didn't know you had company." "Emily, this is Sarah and Lily," Michael said, protectively placing his hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Sarah, this is Emily, my executive assistant." Emily studied Sarah from head to toe, and Sarah could see the exact moment she recognized her as the cleaning lady from the company. Surprise, quickly followed by confusion, and then by something that looked like strategic calculation. "The cleaning lady?" Carla asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Michael, can I speak with you privately?" "Everything you have to say can be said here," Michael replied, his voice taking on the executive tone that Sarah recognized from work calls. Carla looked again at Sarah, then at Lily, and clearly made a decision. "All right. Michael, it's circulating in the company that you are romantically involved with a cleaning lady. The investors in the funding round are questioning your personal decisions." Sarah felt her blood run cold. Corporate gossip, social judgment, public exposure, everything she had tried to avoid for years was materializing. "Which investors?" Michael asked, his voice dangerously low. "Goldman Partners. They sent an email last night questioning the stability of the executive leadership of the company. Michael, you need to understand. They are investing $50 million. They can't afford to have a CEO making questionable choices." Lily, sensing the tension in the air, stopped playing and looked at the adults. Sarah instinctively moved closer to her daughter, a protective gesture that Carla noticed. "Carla," Michael said, his voice controlled but clearly irritated, "my personal life is not the company's business, nor the investors." "Michael, be realistic. You're living with a pregnant cleaning lady. People are talking, saying she took advantage of the situation, that she might have even planned to get pregnant to—" "Stop!" Michael cut Carla off with a firmness that made everyone in the room fall silent. "I will not allow anyone to speak about Sarah in my presence like that, ever again." Sarah felt a mix of gratitude and humiliation. Gratitude because Michael had defended her. Humiliation because she needed to be defended. "Michael," Sarah said softly, "maybe it's best if Lily and I go home. Clearly our presence is causing professional problems for you." "No." Michael was categorical. "You are not going anywhere because of malicious gossip." Carla seized the opening. "Sarah, right? Can I call you Sarah?" Without waiting for a response, she continued, "I'll be direct with you. Michael is a decent man, and maybe he really believes that you have some kind of future together. But look around you." Carla gestured to the sophisticated house. "This is his world. Business dinners, corporate events, international travel. Can you see yourself accompanying Michael to a dinner with Japanese investors? Can you discuss the stock market while sipping champagne that costs $1,000 a bottle? Every word from Carla hit Sarah like a slap, because it touched on deep insecurities she tried to hide. "Carla, that's enough," Michael said, but Carla continued. "And there's more, Sarah. Here's a copy of the contract with Goldman Partners." Carla pulled a paper from her bag. "Moral clause. If Michael does anything that harms the company's image, they can cancel the investment and even sue for damages. $50 million, Sarah. His dream life." Sarah took the paper and read quickly. It was all there in complicated legal language, but clear. Any behavior that could harm the corporate image of Innovatech could result in a breach of contract. "Michael," Sarah said calmly, "did you know about this?" Michael looked uncomfortable. "I did, but it's not relevant." "Not relevant?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "Michael, this means our relationship could literally destroy everything you've built." "Exactly," Carla said, sensing she was gaining ground. "Sarah, I know you're an intelligent woman. Do you really want to be responsible for destroying the career of your daughter's father?" Lily, who had been following the conversation with growing attention, suddenly stood up. "You can't talk to my mum like that." Everyone looked surprised at the 8-year-old, who had positioned herself protectively in front of Sarah. "Lily," Michael started. "No, Dad. She's being mean to Mom. Mum is the smartest person I know. She knows 5 types of knots, can fix anything that breaks, makes the best soup when someone is sick, and works harder than anyone I've ever seen." Carla looked uncomfortably at the child. "Sweetheart, I wasn't being mean. You were. You were saying that Mom isn't good enough for my... And Dad, but you don't know my mom. You only see that she's a cleaning lady and think that means something, but it doesn't." The silence that followed was broken by Sarah's choked voice. "Lily, please go to your room. The adults need to talk." Reluctantly, Lily obeyed, but not before throwing a defiant look at Carla. "Sarah," Carla said as soon as Lily left, "look, I don't want to be the villain in this story, but you all need to be practical. Michael can help you financially. He can be a good dad to Lily, but that doesn't mean you need to be together romantically." Sarah looked at Michael, who seemed to be fighting an internal battle. "Michael, she's right about one thing. Our worlds are very different. I can't even imagine what it would be like to be at a corporate dinner, trying to talk to people who make in a month what I make in a year." "Sarah, that doesn't matter." "It does, Michael." Sarah stood up, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward. "And you know what else? I'm tired of being seen as the poor thing that needs to be rescued. I'm not a charity project. I'm a woman who has built a decent life for my daughter under the circumstances I had." Michael stepped closer to her. "Sarah, you're not a charity project. You're the woman I love. You love the memory of the 18-year-old girl, Michael, not the 32-year-old woman who cleans bathrooms to support her children." Carla watched the discussion with barely concealed satisfaction. Her strategy was working. "You know what I'm going to do?" Sarah said, with a calmness that surprised everyone. "I'm going to make things easier for everyone. Lily is recovering well. The doctor said she can go back to... Normal activities will resume next week. We will return home on Sunday." "Sarah, no. And furthermore, Michael, I will resign from the cleaning company. Clearly my presence there is causing problems for you." Emily couldn't hide a victorious smile. Michael looked from Sarah to Emily, and something changed in his expression. When he spoke, his voice was as cold as Sarah had ever heard. "Emily, you're fired." "What?" Emily seemed to have been slapped. "You're fired. Effective immediately. Do not return to the office. Your belongings will be sent to your home." "Michael, you can't fire me for..." "I can, and I am, for creating a hostile work environment, for investigating employees' personal lives without authorization, and mainly for disrespecting the mother of my child in my home." Emily looked from Michael to Sarah, clearly calculating one last move. Michael, you're making a terrible mistake. When you lose the investment, when your company fails, remember that I tried to warn you. Door, Michael simply said. After Emily left, Michael and Sarah sat in silence in the living room. From upstairs, they could hear Lily softly singing in her room, pretending not to have heard the entire discussion. Michael, Sarah finally said, maybe she was right about some things. Michael moved closer, gently taking Sarah's hands. Sarah Johnson, do you want to know the difference between you and people like Emily? Sarah waited. Emily sees problems and looks for someone to blame. You see problems and find solutions. Emily judges people by appearances. You see the hearts of people. Emily calculates personal advantages. You protect those you love, even when it means sacrificing your own interests. Sarah felt tears burning in her eyes. And do you know the difference between the 18-year-old girl I met and the 32-year-old woman standing in front of me? Sarah shook her head. The girl was sweet and dreamy. The woman is strong, brave and wise. And I love the woman even more than I loved the girl. Sarah finally allowed the tears to fall. And what if you really lose the investment because of me? Michael smiled, wiping the tears from her face. Then I look for other investors. I build another company if necessary. Sarah, I lost you once by choosing money over love. I won't make the same mistake twice. From the top of the stairs, a small voice shouted, "Can I come down now? Did the mean lady leave?" Michael and Sarah laughed through their tears. "You can come down, sweetheart," Michael replied. Lily ran down and threw herself into their arms. "Dad, did you send her away because she was mean to Mom?" "I did." "Good. I didn't like her at all." Sarah looked at Michael and Lily, embraced there in the living room of the house that had become a temporary home, and realized that maybe it was time to stop running from problems and start facing them head-on, together. "Michael," she said, "if we're going to do this, let's do it right. No hiding, no shame, no fear of what people will think." Michael smiled. "Are you sure?" Sarah looked at Lily, then at Michael, and finally at her own belly, where the baby moved as if approving the decision. "I am. I'm tired of living in fear." The decision to face challenges head-on would be tested sooner than Sarah imagined. The following Monday, when they arrived at Innovatec for Michael to resolve some urgent matters and for Sarah to officially resign from the cleaning company, they found a tense atmosphere spreading through the halls. "Mr. Michael," said Sarah, the receptionist, as soon as she saw them enter, "Mr. David asked me to let you know that the investors from Goldman Partners have been in the meeting room since 8 this morning, and there are journalists in the lobby trying to come up." Michael frowned. "Journalists? About what?" Sarah hesitated, looking uncomfortably at Sarah. About your personal life, sir. Someone leaked information to the press." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "Michael, maybe it's better if I wait downstairs." "No," Michael was firm. "We face this together, remember? Lily, who had missed another day of school to accompany her parents in this resolution, watched everything with curiosity." "Why are there journalists here, Dad?" "Because sometimes people become very interested in the lives of others, sweetheart," Michael explained, squeezing his daughter's small hand. When they reached the executive floor, David Wilson was waiting for them with a worried expression. "Michael, we need to talk urgently. The guys from Goldman are furious. Someone sent them photos of you leaving the hospital with Sarah and Lily, along with a complete dossier on her personal life." "What kind of dossier?" Michael asked, his voice dangerously low. "Isabella's date of birth, confirmation that Sarah works as a cleaning lady, information about the current pregnancy. Michael, they are seriously questioning the investment." Sarah felt physically nauseous. "Emily," she murmured. "There's more," David continued. The magazine Business and Executives is going to publish a piece this week titled CEO of Innovatech Impregnates Cleaning Lady and Assumes Paternity. The journalist is trying to confirm if you are the biological father of the baby she's expecting. Michael clenched his fists. David, call a press conference for 2 o'clock. Michael, have you lost your mind? A press conference will give even more visibility to the scandal. It's not a scandal, David. It's my life, and I'm not going to hide anymore. Sarah held his arm. Michael, think carefully. You could lose everything. Sarah, you don't understand. Michael turned to her, his hands gently holding her face. I lost everything once when I lost you. Everything else is just money and status. It can be earned back. Lily tugged at her mother's skirt. Mom, why is everyone worried? Did Dad do something wrong? Sarah bent down with difficulty to be at her daughter's height. No, sweetheart, Dad didn't do anything wrong. It's just that sometimes when people from different social classes fall in love, others think they can give their opinion about it. But that's nonsense, said Lily with the frankness of children. The teacher at school always says that what matters is what's in a person's heart, not how much money they have. David looked at the girl in surprise. She's very smart. Took after her mom, said Michael with pride. At 2 in the afternoon, the interview room at Innovatech was packed. Journalists from economic magazines, news portals, even reporters from gossip shows. Michael had insisted that Sarah and Lily stay by his side throughout the interview. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael began, his voice firm and clear. I called this interview to clarify some information that has been circulating in the press about my personal life. A journalist from the New York Times raised his hand. Mr. Thompson, is it true that you are living with a cleaning lady who works in your building? Michael smiled. I am living with Sarah Johnson, who is the mother of my 8-year-old daughter and who is 2 months pregnant with my second child. A murmur swept through the room. Several journalists began to furiously take notes. Second child? Asked a reporter from People magazine, but the information we received indicates that the current pregnancy is the result of another relationship. Michael looked at Sarah, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Biologically, yes, but I consider any child of Sarah's to be my child as well. When the baby is born, I will legally register him as my heir. The room exploded with murmurs and camera flashes. Mr. Thompson, shouted a reporter from BuzzFeed, how does this affect your business? There are rumors that investors are pulling out due to these personal entanglements. Michael took a deep breath. Any investor who bases their financial decisions on my personal life is not the kind of partner I want for my company. Innovatech was built on merit, innovation, and results. Those fundamentals have not changed. But is it true that Goldman Partners cancelled their $50 million investment? Insisted another journalist. Goldman Partners made that decision based on class prejudice, not on economic fundamentals. Fortunately, I already have 3 other investment groups interested in participating in our expansion, investors who understand that a CEO's personal life does not interfere with their professional capacity. Sarah looked at Michael in surprise. He hadn't mentioned other interested investors. Mrs. Johnson, a reporter addressed Sarah directly, how do you respond to the criticism that you are taking advantage of Mr. Thompson's financial situation? Sarah felt all eyes turn to her. Lily held her hand, giving silent strength. I worked as a cleaning lady for 8 years to support my daughter, Sarah began, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. I never asked a penny from anyone, never depended on favors or charity. When I reconnected with Michael, I didn't know he was the CEO of any company. To me, he was simply the father of my daughter who had come back into our lives. But don't you find it problematic for a CEO to be in a relationship with an employee of a contracted company? Michael interjected. Sarah no longer works for the cleaning company. She resigned specifically to avoid any ethical conflict. And now, what will you dedicate yourself to, Mrs. Johnson? Sarah looked at Michael, then at Lily, and made a decision that surprised her. I will go back to studying. I always wanted to be a teacher, but I had to interrupt my studies when Lily was born. Now I will pursue that dream again. Financed by Mr. Thompson. Financed by a scholarship that I will earn on my own merit, Sarah replied firmly. Michael offered to help me, but I prefer to achieve it through my own effort. That's how I've always lived. Michael looked at Sarah with a mix of pride and admiration. She was handling the pressure from the press with a dignity that made his heart swell with love. Mr. Thompson, asked a more aggressive journalist, isn't it inconvenient for your public image to marry a cleaning lady? Wouldn't it be more strategic to keep a discreet relationship? The question left the room in silence. Michael stood up, his posture radiating an authority that made everyone present pay attention. Let me clarify something for all of you, he said, his voice echoing through the room. Sarah Johnson is the bravest, most honorable, and most intelligent woman I know. She raised an exceptional daughter on her own, worked tirelessly to provide dignity and education for our daughter, and never played the victim or asked anyone for help. If there is anyone in this room who should be ashamed of something, it's me for taking 14 years to have the maturity to be worthy of her. The silence that followed was broken by the crystal-clear voice of Lily. Can I say something? All eyes turned to the 8-year-old girl. Michael picked her up, placing her at the microphone's height. My name is Lily Johnson, and I want to say something about my mom, she began, with the seriousness of an adult. You keep saying she's just a cleaning lady, as if that's a bad thing. But do you know that my mom works from 6 in the morning until night to take care of me? Do you know that she has never missed a school meeting, even when she was tired? Do you know that she taught me to read before I went to school, and that she studies with me every night, even after working all day? The room was completely silent, all the adults looking impressed at that eloquent child. And you know what else? I don't care if my mom is a cleaning lady or the President of the United States. She is the best mom in the world, and anyone who can't see that is the one with the problem, not her. Lily handed the microphone back to Michael and whispered, "Did I do well, Dad?" Michael hugged her. With tears in his eyes, he said, "You spoke perfectly, sweetheart." When the interview ended and the journalists left, David approached the trio. "Michael, are you sure about what you're doing? Because after this interview, there's no turning back." Michael looked at Sarah, who was holding Lily's hand, and smiled. "David, for the first time in years, I'm absolutely sure about something. There's really no turning back, and that's a good thing." Sarah stepped closer to him. "Michael, you said you have other investors interested. Is that true?" Michael grinned mischievously. "Starting tomorrow, it will be. After our family's performance today, I'm sure several investors will want to partner with a company led by someone with clear principles and a supportive family." Sarah shook her head, laughing. "You're impossible, Michael Thompson." "Impossible to give up on you two," he replied, kissing her forehead. "Now let's head home. Our daughter deserves ice cream after the performance she gave today." Lily clapped her hands. "Can I choose 3 flavors?" "You can choose as many flavors as you want, sweetheart," said Michael. "Today, you defended our family better than any lawyer." As they left the building, Sarah realized she no longer felt shame or fear from curious glances. For the first time, she was walking with her head held high beside the man she loved, and the daughter who had taught them that family is about courage, not social conventions. The storm had passed, and they had survived together. 3 weeks after the press conference, life had taken a surprisingly positive turn. Innovatech not only secured new investors, Two European funds impressed by the authenticity and family values of the leadership, but also gained unexpected media visibility. Michael had been invited to give talks on authentic leadership, and Sarah received an offer to participate in a documentary about social overcoming. But the real change was happening inside their home in the Upper West Side, which had transformed from a temporary residence into a true home. "Dad, can you help me with my science project?" Lily asked on Saturday morning, finding Michael in the kitchen making pancakes, a skill he had developed specifically to please his daughter. "Of course, sweetheart. What's the topic?" "Solar system. I have to make a model and present it on Monday." Michael smiled. "How about we make an edible solar system? We can use chocolate balls of different sizes to represent the planets." Sarah, who was at the table drinking chamomile tea and reading about the selection process for the education program at NYU, looked over her glasses. "Michael, you're going to ruin her science project by turning everything into candy." "I won't," Michael protested, skillfully flipping a pancake in the air. "It'll be educational and delicious. Jupiter will be a big truffle, Mercury a candied cherry." Lily laughed. "And Saturn, how are we going to make the rings?" "Ring-shaped tapioca cookies," Michael replied immediately, clearly excited about the project. Sarah shook her head, smiling. The ease with which Michael had adapted to fatherhood still surprised her. He had cancelled business trips to avoid missing Lily's school recitals, learned to braid their daughter's hair by watching YouTube videos, and turned work Sundays into family outing Sundays. "By the way," Michael said, placing a plate of pancakes in front of Sarah, "Lily's pediatrician called yesterday. Her post-surgery tests are perfect. She's completely recovered." Sarah felt a pang in her chest. Lily's full recovery meant there was no longer a medical justification for them to continue living there. Michael noticed the change in her expression. "Sarah, we need to talk about this, don't we?" Lily looked back and forth between them. "Talk about what?" "About where we're going to live from now on," Sarah said carefully. "But we already live here," Lily said, as if it were obvious. "This is our home." Michael sat down next to Sarah. "Isa, when your mom agreed to move here, it was only until you recovered from the surgery. Now that you're well, you want me and Mom to leave?" Lily's voice became small and scared. "No!" Michael replied immediately. "I don't want you two to go away ever, but this decision has to be your mom's." Sarah looked at her daughter, who had clearly become attached to the idea of having a present father and a stable home, then at Michael, who was trying to hide the fear of losing them again. "Lily," Sarah began, "what do you think about all this? About living here with Dad?" Lily thought seriously before responding. "Mom, I've never been this happy in my life. I have a dad who helps me with homework, who makes pancakes in the morning, who remembers my school snack, and you smile more. Now, you sing when you're cooking. You don't worry as much when bills come to the table." Her daughter's observation hit Sarah deeply. It was true. She was happier, more relaxed, more herself than she had been in years. "But what if it doesn't work out, Lily? What if—" Sarah hesitated. "What if Dad decides he doesn't want us here anymore?" Michael took Sarah's hand across the table. "Sarah Johnson, will you marry me?" The question came out of nowhere, making Sarah choke on her tea. "What? Marry me? Not for convenience, not because of Lily, not because of social pressure. Marry me because you love me and because I love you madly." Lily clapped her hands. "Will there be a wedding party? Can I be a bridesmaid?" "Lily, calm down," Sarah said, still in shock. "Michael, this is very sudden." "Sarah, none of this is sudden. I should have asked you to marry me 14 years ago. I should have fought for you when my dad tried to separate us. I should have sought you out with more determination when I came back from the States. But now—" Michael stood up. and to total surprise, Sarah knelt beside her chair. "Michael, what are you doing? What I should have done a long time ago." Michael pulled a small box from his pocket. "Sarah Johnson, my first and only love, mother of my wonderful daughter, the strongest and bravest woman I know. Will you marry me?" Sarah looked at the ring, a simple and elegant solitaire, nothing ostentatious, then at Michael, who was looking at her with complete vulnerability, and finally at Lily, who held her hands to her chest as if watching the end of a romantic movie. "Michael, I'm 8 months pregnant with another man. Are you sure you want this?" "Sarah, this baby is going to be my child in heart, in the documents, and in every way that matters. I don't see this as another man's child. I see it as our second child." The tears Sarah had been holding back began to fall. "What if I can't adapt to your world? What if I embarrass you at business dinners?" "Sweetheart," Michael smiled, "you just got invited to speak about overcoming challenges at a university. A magazine wants to do a feature on you. 3 publishers have already called asking if you're interested in writing a book about your story. If anyone here should worry about adapting to the other's world, it's me." Lily, who had been quiet throughout the conversation, finally spoke. "Mom, remember when you told me that the best things in life are the ones that scare us?" Sarah laughed through her tears, her own words being used against her by an 8-year-old. "And remember when you said that family isn't about being perfect, but about being together even when everything goes wrong?" Michael looked surprised at Lily. "She really is very smart." "Took after you," said Sarah, finally relaxing. "So?" Michael remained kneeling. "Sarah Johnson, will you marry me?" Sarah looked around the kitchen where they had shared so many morning cappuccinos, where Michael had learned to make Lily's favorite sandwich, where she had allowed herself to dream again of a stable future. She looked at her daughter, radiant with expectation, and at the man who had returned to her life as a second chance she never expected to receive. "Yes," she simply said. "Yes, I accept to marry you, Michael Thompson." Lily squealed with joy and threw herself into their arms. Michael slid the ring onto Sarah's finger and kissed her gently, a kiss that sealed not only a commitment, but the healing of old wounds. "Can I tell everyone at school that my dad proposed to my mom in our kitchen?" asked Lily. "Sure," laughed Michael. "You can tell anyone you want." At that moment, as if approving of the decision, the baby in Sarah's belly kicked hard, making her gasp. "I think he approved too," said Sarah, placing her hand on her belly. Michael placed his hand over hers. "He?" "Mother's intuition. I think we're having a boy." "Michael Jr.," suggested Lily. "No," said Sarah immediately. "He will have his own name, Miguel. I've always liked that name. Miguel Johnson Thompson," Michael tested. "Perfect." They remained there, in the sunlit kitchen, planning a future that finally seemed possible. Michael cancelled all his meetings for the day to focus on the Edible Solar System project. Sarah called her mum in New Jersey to share the news, and Lily started a list of things I need for my parents' wedding. "One thing," said Sarah later, when they were alone in the garden while Lily watched cartoons. "I want a simple wedding, no magazine, no ostentation." "As you wish," agreed Michael. "I just want it to be official. I want you to be my wife, legally, emotionally, and in every way." Sarah smiled, playing with her new ring on her finger. "You know what excites me the most? What? For the first time in 14 years, I'm not afraid of the future." Michael pulled her into an embrace, feeling the baby move between them. "Me neither. For the first time, I know exactly where I want to be in 10, 20, 50 years. Where? Right here with you." As the sun set over New York, painting the sky pink and orange, They remained in the garden, planning a life that had started with a yellowed photograph and now stretched toward a future full of possibilities. The family that fate had separated was finally reunited, stronger and wiser for having survived the storm. 2 months later, May mornings arrived fresh and sunny, painting Central Park with golden tones that made the trees look blessed. Sarah was sitting in a comfortable chair near the gazebo where, in a few hours, she would marry Michael. Her dress was simple yet elegant, a white lace design that perfectly accommodated her 9-month belly. Miguel could arrive at any moment, and everyone joked that he was waiting for his parents' wedding to make his debut. "Mum, are you nervous?" asked Lily, who was running through the park in a light pink bridesmaid dress fluttering in the wind. In her 3 months of living permanently with Michael, she had grown a few inches and gained a confidence that came from finally having a stable family. "A little," admitted Sarah, watching the event company staff, a small and discreet team, finish decorating the space. Just 50 guests, close family, a few close friends, and Michael's closest colleagues. "Why nervous? You already live together, you're already family," said Lily with the simple logic of children. Sarah smiled. Her daughter was right, but still there was something solemn and definitive about the wedding that moved her. Perhaps it was the formalization of a love that had survived 14 years of separation, or perhaps Mrs. Johnson felt certain that this time there would be no more abandonments or goodbyes. "Mrs. Johnson." The cheerful voice of James, the doorman who had become almost a grandfather to Lily, interrupted her thoughts. "You look beautiful, like a princess." Mrs. Johnson laughed. Michael had insisted on inviting James and his wife, Mrs. Smith, along with all the cleaning staff who had worked with Mrs. Johnson. It was important to him that the people she considered family were present. "And where's Michael? Has he arrived?" Mrs. Johnson asked. "Yes, he has, but he can't see the bride before the ceremony. He's over there at the gazebo, chatting with David and passing the time," James replied. "But can I say something? In 15 years working in that building, I've never seen Dr. Michael as happy as he has been in the last few months." The doorman's words warmed Mrs. Johnson's heart. Michael truly seemed like a transformed man, more relaxed, more present, more genuinely happy. The company continued to thrive, but he had learned to balance work and family in a way he hadn't before. "Mrs. Johnson!" The voice of her mother, Mrs. Thompson, who had arrived from Florida the day before, approached carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers. "Honey, these are for you. I picked them from the garden of the house where I'm staying." Mrs. Johnson accepted the flowers, touched. Her mother, a simple woman who had raised 3 children alone after becoming a widow at a young age, was radiant. Michael had insisted on covering all her travel expenses and had even arranged comfortable accommodations at a nearby hotel. "Mum, thank you for coming. Honey, I wouldn't miss this for anything, especially after meeting Michael. He's a good man, Mrs. Johnson. You can see he truly loves you." Mrs. Thompson had initially been skeptical. A rich man who comes back after so long always has ulterior motives. But Michael had won her approval at the first dinner when he asked about her cornbread recipe and carefully noted each ingredient. Mrs. Johnson called a familiar voice. It was Emily, approaching hesitantly, dressed in a discreet business suit. Mrs. Johnson felt Lily move protectively closer, but she gestured for her daughter to stay calm. "Emily, I didn't expect to see you here. Michael invited me. He said he wanted me to see what a real family looks like." Emily seemed genuinely embarrassed. "I came to apologize, Mrs. Johnson. What I did was unforgivable. I let envy and ambition turn me into a cruel person." Mrs. Johnson studied the woman who had tried to destroy her happiness. Emily seemed smaller, more human, without the armor of superiority she usually wore. Why are you apologizing now? Because, Emily hesitated, because I lost everything I thought was important and discovered it wasn't important at all. I lost my job, I lost my arrogance, I lost the illusion that social status means anything, and you gained everything that truly matters. Mrs. Johnson looked at Lily playing with other children, at her mother animatedly chatting with Mrs. Smith, at Michael in the distance adjusting his tie nervously while David calmed him down. Emily, I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I don't want to carry resentment in my heart. Today is a day of new beginnings. Emily nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson, and congratulations. You both deserve all the happiness in the world. As Emily walked away, Mrs. Johnson felt a strong pang in her lower back. Michael Jr. was moving a lot, as if he were also anxious for the big day. "Mom," Lily approached, "is it time?" Mrs. Johnson looked at the clock. 4 in the afternoon. Time for the ceremony. The gazebo was simply decorated with white flowers and golden ribbons. The guests settled onto the wooden benches, while a string quartet played a soft version of Ave Maria. Michael stood at the makeshift altar, wearing a charcoal grey suit, but it was his radiant smile that caught Mrs. Johnson's attention as she appeared at the beginning of the aisle. Lily walked ahead, scattering rose petals along the way, proud of her role as the official maid of honor. Mrs. Johnson walked slowly, accompanied by her mother, a choice she made since she had no father to walk her down the aisle. When she reached Michael, he extended his hand to her, and Mrs. Johnson felt as if all the broken pieces of her life were finally falling into place. "You look beautiful," Michael whispered, his eyes shining with emotion. The officiant, a friendly man Michael had met through friends, began the ceremony with simple words about the importance of commitment and true love. "Michael and Mrs. Johnson," he said, "you've written your own vows." "Michael?" Michael took a paper from his pocket, but then put it away again. "I was going to read something I wrote, but looking at you now, Mrs. Johnson, all I can think of is one thing. Thank you." Mrs. Johnson tilted her head, surprised. "Thank you for forgiving me when I didn't deserve forgiveness. Thank you for giving me the chance to know our amazing daughter. Thank you for letting me be part of your story again. And thank you for teaching me that family isn't about perfection. It's about choosing to stay, even when everything seems impossible." Michael looked at Lily, who was radiant. "Lily, you are also part of these vows. I promise to be the father you have always deserved, to be present in every important moment of your life, and to love your mother with all the respect and dedication she deserves." Now it was Mrs. Johnson's turn. She had written and rewritten her vows several times, but looking at Michael, at Lily, at all the loved ones gathered there, the words that came out were straight from the heart. "Michael, 14 years ago you taught me what love was. Then you taught me what loss was. But in the last few months you taught me something even more important. That it is possible to heal, that it is possible to start over, and that true love is worth waiting for." Mrs. Johnson placed her hand on her belly. "I promise to build with you a family based in honesty, mutual respect, and unconditional love. I promise we will never lose each other again, because now we know too much about the value of what we have." The judge conducted the exchange of rings, simple white gold bands that Michael had personally chosen. When he declared, "I now pronounce you husband and wife, you may kiss the bride," the kiss that followed was gentle, respectful, but full of promise for the future. The guests applauded, Lily shouted with joy, and at that moment Michael Jr. decided to give his first truly strong kick. "Ouch!" Sarah bent slightly, holding her belly. "Sarah?" Michael immediately became alarmed. "I think—" Sarah felt another strong contraction. "I think Michael Jr. doesn't want to wait for the party to meet everyone." What followed was an organized whirlwind of activity. Dr. Smith, the doctor who had cared for Lily and who had been invited to the wedding, immediately took charge. Michael carried Sarah to the car while Lily ran behind, excitedly shouting, "My little brother is coming! My little brother is coming!" "Michael," Sarah said between contractions, "what a different honeymoon, huh?" Michael laughed, calmly driving toward Albert Einstein Hospital. "Sarah Johnson with you, life will never be ordinary." Sarah Johnson. It was the first time she heard her new name, and it made her smile even amidst the contractions. At the hospital, while Sarah was in the delivery room, Michael nervously paced the waiting room with Lily by his side. The girl was still dressed as a bridesmaid, refusing to change. "Dad, does it hurt a lot when the baby is born?" Lily asked. "It hurts a little, sweetheart, but your mom is very strong." "She has always been strong. When I was little and got sick, she never slept to take care of me." Michael felt a pang of guilt, remembering all the nights Sarah had faced alone the challenges of raising a child. At 6:43 in the evening, Dr. Smith appeared in the waiting room with a radiant smile. "Congratulations! Michael Jr. Johnson has entered the world, weighing 3.5 kilos, 48 centimeters, crying like a little lion. Mother and baby are doing very well." Michael felt tears streaming down his face. "Can I see them?" "Of course, and the big sister can also meet the new family member." In the room, Sarah was reclining on the bed, tired but radiant, holding a little baby with dark hair who seemed to be observing the world with curiosity. When Michael and Lily entered, she smiled. "Hi, Dad. Hi, Lily. Come meet Michael Jr." Michael approached reverently, as if he were in front of a miracle. "He is perfect. Do you want to hold him?" With trembling hands, Michael took his son in his arms. Michael Jr. opened his dark little eyes, which already looked like Sarah's, and gazed at his father with impressive serenity. "Hi, Michael. Oh, Junior, I am your dad. I know that biologically I am not, but in my heart you have been my son since the first day I knew you existed." Lily, curious, gently touched her brother's tiny closed fist. "He is so small. And look, Mom, he has the same birthmark you have on your wrist." It was true, a small crescent-shaped mark on the right wrist, identical to the one Sarah had. "I think Michael Jr. approved the family," said Michael, returning the baby to Sarah. "He was born exactly on our wedding day." "Actually," Sarah smiled mischievously, "I think he organized everything just right. He waited for us to formalize the union before making his official appearance." Dr. Smith entered the room to check the vital signs. "How do you feel being an officially complete family?" Michael looked at Sarah, holding Michael Jr., at Lily, watching her brother with total adoration, and felt a deep peace settle in his chest. "Doctor, for the first time in my life, I feel exactly where I should be." 3 days later, when they left the hospital, Michael did not drive home to the Upper West Side, but to a special destination. He stopped the car at Sunset Park in Central Park, exactly on the same bench where that faded photograph had been taken that changed their lives. "Why did we come here?" Sarah asked, adjusting Michael Jr. in her lap. "Because everything started here. And I want our family to have a new photo in this place, to replace that memory of separation with one of union." They positioned themselves on the same bench. Michael, Sarah with Michael Jr. in her lap, and Lily sitting between them. The sun was setting just like it had on that day in April, 14 years ago, painting the sky orange and pink. A kind tourist offered to take the photo, just as it had happened the first time. "Say family," suggested the man. "Family!" they all shouted together, and even Michael Jr. seemed to smile in his mom's arms. When the man returned the camera, Michael looked at the image on the digital display. 4 people united by love, perseverance, and the courage to believe in second chances. "Sarah," he said, putting the camera away, Do you think our story will have a happy ending? Sarah looked around at the park that had witnessed the beginning of their love story, at Lily, who finally had the present father she had always dreamed of, at Michael Jr., sleeping peacefully in her arms, and at Michael, the man who had broken her heart and then mended it with patience and true love. "Michael," she said, leaning in to kiss him softly as the sun set over New York, "I think our story is just beginning." And there, at Sunset Park, surrounded by unconditional love and the promise of a future built on the solid foundation of forgiveness and second chances, the Johnson family was finally complete. The circle had closed. The faded photograph that Sarah had kept for 14 years as a reminder of a lost love had transformed into the prologue of a love story that proved that sometimes fairy tales exist in real life. They just require a little more patience, courage, and faith in the transformative power of true love.